Hey YouTube, just wanted to give you guys a quick video walkthrough on iOS 7 versus iOS 5 and I guess technically iOS 6. So I've got two exact equipped iPhone 4S's in front of you here. The white one running iOS 7 that was upgraded this morning and a iPhone 4S running iOS 5.11. Which in many ways is very similar to iOS 6, look and feel wise that is. So I mean, I'm going to just sort of highlight the obvious features here. There's a million websites and other YouTubers that I'm sure have done extremely detailed reviews of iOS 7, which I'm not going to cover. But I mean, the key point of why I'm doing this video is to actually highlight to iPhone 4S owners that are running the sort of older A5 CPU on their iDevices. So that I believe that's iPod Touch 5th generation, iPad 2, and iPhone 4S. That's running the twin-core A5 CPU. That it can actually run iOS 7 perfectly fine. And for those that have owned, for example, an iPhone 3GS or an iPad 1 that once transferred from iOS 4 to iOS 5 and realized that they've essentially bricked their device because of such poor system speed performance, that you're not going to see that same phenomenon occur when you upgrade your A5 enabled mobile device to iOS 7. So just a quick walkthrough here. So I mean, as you can tell from the different screens of different application icons here, that there's definitely a different appearance to the Apple packed in application icons. So for example, the weather icon, Safari, they're all a little bit different looking. They don't have as much of a three-dimensional realist look to them anymore. It's taken on the tone of more of a kid toy-ish like appearance with overly saturated pastel-like colors that really just pop out. And of course they don't have that 3D shading and all that fun stuff on the icons. Why Apple did that? Well, Johnny Ive is a minimalist and a simplistic appearance type individual, so it doesn't really surprise me that the interface has been modified to look this way. So a couple key things here that I personally found was rather useful and definitely noticeable when I upgraded to iOS 7 is that, well, one, we already talked about the icons. Two, we've already talked about performance of applications and the overall sort of user experience is nice and fluid, like the old OS. But for example, when you want to switch on Do Not Disturb mode or Wi-Fi changes or enabling Bluetooth, before you would have to go into the settings icon, find the Wi-Fi submenu, turn on and off, and go back out and do your thing. And that was the same for brightness and a whole host of other things that you had to do. And I mean, in iOS 7, you could technically do the same thing by going into the settings menu. But what Apple's really done is that they've actually enhanced the overall user experience by making life easy to change settings that are commonly toggled around with. And we can do this by swiping up from the home button up. Sorry guys, my fingers are extremely dry. By swiping up from the home button using a swipe up gesture, and that exposes key settings like turning Wi-Fi on and off, Bluetooth, Do Not Disturb mode, screen orientation lock, as well as airplane mode, screen brightness, iPod play, fast forward, rewind, and volume, AirPlay, as well as some sort of commonly used features listed below here, which is like, for example, timer, calculator, your camera app, and a new one, which is the flashlight app. Now, people shouldn't technically get all excited about this, but it's nice that Apple finally realized that they should have an app to turn on the light on their cameras instead of having Apple device owners have to download a free third-party app to turn on the flashlight, so to speak. So I mean, that's a really good and useful pack-in. I move in and out of my office all the time, and I'm sometimes just on the cusp of being out of range on my Wi-Fi at work, and I need to resort back to 3G to get some decent internet performance. And before, I'd have to always go through the settings menu like this to change things around, whereas now I can simply just with a single swipe turn Wi-Fi off or back on. Now it won't let you change which Wi-Fi network to connect to because it's assuming that where you're going to be at is the one that it's memorized in its settings. So if you're going to a place that has Wi-Fi and you haven't configured it, then you're going to have to go into the settings menu to go ahead and change it. As far as the other notable differences, for example, if you like using the spotlight on your iPhone, before if you had multiple menus like this, you would have to keep swiping and swiping and swiping to get to spotlight to find something on your phone. What's really neat about iOS 7 that makes it convenient for those that do like using spotlight is that you just simply place your finger in the center of the screen and swipe up or sorry, not swipe up, swipe down from the center to find Spotlight on your phone, which is really neat. And then to put it away, just in the center of your screen, swipe back up. So Spotlight on, Spotlight off. So that was a really neat little pack-in that it's such a subtle change, but it is a very useful function. The other thing too that people will notice, of course, is the notification center. Before, it was quite busy with as far as messages and notifications from your applications and weather and in this textured gray background, and of course that it looked really busy. And so to show that to you on iOS 5, which is very similar to iOS 6, and what the new appearance looks like now in iOS 7. So the background is definitely more pleasing to look at because it uses a blurred sort of translucent background. You can sort of see your apps here in the background, and but I mean, it's a nicer looking interface, in a nutshell. So again, a subtle improvement over prior versions of iOS. Things like your iPod application here, so music, there's definitely sort of a more immersive graphical appearance now with album cover art, whereas, in the old iOS 5 version of the iPod, it didn't have any of those type of pack-ins. Like, it's all list view with just titles, whereas here, it has all the album art, which is sort of a nice enhancement. Playing around with Siri today. So we all know that Siri, was sort of a voice recognition system that sort of has gone horribly wrong. And so what I found is that Siri in iOS 7 is dramatically improved and is offered both in a male and female variant. Just messing around with it on my car Bluetooth speakerphone, Siri version 7, I guess I'll call it, or generation 3 of Siri. Again, it recognizes voices and words a lot better than the original Siri that came with iOS 5. What else can I comment on as far as like the phone, for example? It's just the interface, right? There's a lot more, again, lots of sort of graphical, pictorial representations of people. Even the way the screens fade out. So for example, when you push the power button, the screen would just go off, whereas when you push the power button here, it would fade off, fade back on as such in this manner. And even the slide to unlock is sort of in a subtle manner. So again, the passcode screen looks a little bit different. So it's just all these little sort of minor refinements to just lead to a better overall experience on the iOS platform that I think a lot of people will come to appreciate. Is it the best version of iOS 7 that's come out? Well, according to Apple, it is. Do I think that it's revolutionary? Far from it. In fact, this is what iOS 6 should have been like right from the get-go. But the key important message here I want to deliver to everyone is the fact that iOS 7 will run sufficiently fine on an A5 twin-core enabled iOS device. It's not going to be like the same crapshoot that your iPhone 3GS and iPad 1 was years and years ago. I think Apple really thought this one through as far as their marketing campaign went. You got to think iPad 2, iPad mini, even iPhone 4S is still available with the A5 CPU, so it would be silly on their part to create an operating system that would immediately obsolete those devices that they're currently selling. So since Johnny Ive has taken over sort of the iOS development from Scott Forstall, I would presume that he put some thought into sort of system optimization to lead to the best user experience possible, which is what Apple was always all about. So I hope you found this video useful and informative. I want to make clear that I'm no tech expert. I'm only telling you this from an average guy's point of view. Rate, comment, and subscribe.